This is a recording on July 8th, reading of My Little Dashie Blind with a guest star of mine who I guess wants to go by the name of something.
Hi? I don't know.
Now, it's discrepancy. Okamiga or Pluto?
I guess so, yep. Hi.
Well, I'll call you Pluto just for the sake of calling you that. So we're gonna read through more of My Little Dashie, I guess. And she's gonna listen along because the story intrigued her.
Yes, it did. It's very cute.
Alright, here we go. That's not the part where I left off, okay. So now I have to scroll back down. Alright, here we go. There is a point in every parent's life when they have to let their child go. Whether it be for the better or for the worst, it must happen at some point. I now sit here in my living room, by myself, sulking over the photographs of my distant memories of me and Dashie. On her 20th birthday, I had planned a special outing to go see a flight show. As we prepared to leave, there was a knocking on the door. Never in the years we have lived there had anyone knocked at the door. Hell, we hadn't even made arrangements if someone did show up. I simply told her to go to her room while I took care of it. Once I heard her door shut, calmly and collectively, I asked who it was knocking. Who was knocking, expecting some stranger possibly lost on his or her travels. A female voice spoke in such a elegant, yet attention-grabbing tone. I felt myself listening to her with the uttermost attention. She asked if she may come in, a question I'd normally refuse within a heartbeat, and yet something about her voice was reminiscent. I couldn't help but walk over and open the door. When I first saw the figure standing on my porch, I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or hallucinating. Standing there was the radiant and majestic Princess Celestia. I was at a loss for words, fighting both emotions of brony excitement, which I had only felt when I first found Dashie, and emotions of sorrow, for I knew what this meant. She stood there another second looking at me. We matched each other in eye level, her body being the size of a nearly full-grown horse. I stepped back and allowed her to enter, what caught me off guard next was the 5 other ponies that followed suit. First, Twilight Sparkle, then the rest of the gang. Applejack, Rarity, Fluttershy, and lastly, Pinkie Pie bounced in. Ooh, this is what an alien house looks like on the inside. Oh my, you have a kitchen! I'm starving. Are you starving? I can make us some... She was stopped by Applejack's hoof. Easy there, Sugar Cube. We're just here for Rainbow, so we ain't got no time for any eating. Applejack's stomach growled. No matter how hungry we are. I still wasn't sure how completely to react to all this. But not wanting to be rude, I offered some leftovers. We have some leftovers from the dinner last night. You're more than welcome to some. Pinkie took it as an okay and ran into the kitchen with much vigor. It seemed I did not even need to tell her where anything was. She instantly knew where everything was placed. Factor it to either dumb luck or simply being Pinkie Pie. I chose the latter. Keep an eye on her, said Applejack, walking to join the hyper pony. As she passed, she tipped her hat to me. I was finding it odd the ponies were not more hesitant around a creature such as me. Then again, the same could be for myself, but having Dashie for 15 years, I grew used to having such a time around me. Now I had 5 other ponies and a full-size goddess horse looking at me with the same amount of curiosity that I held for them. There was a moment of silence as I watched the 2 mares enter my kitchen and begin to rummage through my fridge. I'm quite surprised, Celestia began. I had expected a little more resistance to us entering. Why? I know who you all are. Celestia nodded. Ah, so you do know, then. That you're fictional characters from a children's television show? Then yes. Otherwise, why you are all here, I have no clue. The last part I lied, hoping to keep my mind at ease. I knew the reason, but I wanted to ignore it. Oh, I think you do. My heart fell into the pit of my stomach. I did know, and she was straight to the point about it. During all these years I had anticipated this moment. But as time drug on that thought slowly dispelled until it was nothing more than a minor nip in my mind. That's when it always happens, you know? When everything is finally perfect, and you don't have to worry anymore. Excuse me, sir, Twilight began, but from what we could figure out, Rainbow Dash should be here, is she? I looked at the purple mare. I wanted to tell her no, but I knew it was fruitless. She's upstairs in her room. In her room? Rarity asked in surprise. Yes, Dashie is in her room. I wasn't sure who was knocking, but I didn't want her to be spotted. Dashie, my, you're that friendly with her already? I wanted to punch that pony so hard right then. How she responded insulted me. Friendly? That's not even the beginning of it. And I should be asking you ponies as to what the hell you did. Celestia raised a brow, taken back by my change of tone. You see, my student, I know who she is. Get to the chase. I was very short with her. As furious as I was, I wanted to know why they'd send Dashie as a filly to some other world. Twilight bit her lip, as her teacher continued. Yes, of course. Ahem. She was working on a spell to help the weather team with some storm development. Well, they made slightly too large of a storm, and when Twilight used her magic to try to dispel it, it shot a lightning bolt meeting her magic. Rainbow Dash was unfortunate enough to be within the reach of the blast, and so it engulfed her, and sent her to, well, here. So, we are here to retrieve her. Simple enough, I imagine. Before I could answer, Dashie called from her bedroom. Dad, is everything alright? That second, my heart stopped beating as I looked from pony to pony. Each one's face was in pure shock and confusion. They recognized the voice of their Rainbow Dash, but she said, Dad. Excuse me, Sugar Cube, Applejack started, returning from the kitchen. Did I just hear you call Rainbow Dash... Or, did I just hear Rainbow Dash call you Dad? Before I could answer, Celestia started up again. Do you care to explain? I was lost. So many things were running through my mind at once. There was only one thing I could do, and I had to do it, but I knew I wouldn't like it. Go into the living room and make yourselves comfortable. I'll be right down with her. I didn't allow a response. I turned around and walked upstairs slowly. Dad? Yeah, Dashie, I'm coming right up. I looked back down at the group of ponies as they watched me ascend. We need to talk. So that's what I did. I told her who was down there, and that they were there to take her back. She had seen the cartoon every so often after some time, and found the wacky adventures entertaining. She had given up any thought that the Rainbow Dash in this show was her, and I only viewed it as another cartoon. As I talked to her and explained that those very ponies she didn't believe in were downstairs, she brushed me off with some laughs. She didn't believe me, and thought I was playing some joke on her. So I took her down to the living room. Dashie! Pinkie shouted, jumping into the cyan friend. Dashie was quick to shove the pink pony off. Hey, get away from me! She was taken aback by the sudden amount of ponies filling our living room. They all looked to her with worried expressions as to why she shoved her closet friend away. Or closest friend away, excuse me. Pinkie's cotton candy mane went straight as she looked in confusion. You don't recognize me, do you? No, nor any of you. Dashie continued. It hurt me in so many ways. I knew these were her friends, but so many things have happened differently that she didn't know the truth fully. And the other day. So I had to explain to them. I started. Dashie, take a seat, please, so I can talk to them. She did just that, in her recliner. The entire time she looked at all the ponies who occupied the couches and the center rug in front of the fireplace. It was time. But first I had to start with a question. How long ago was she sent over here? The question caught him off guard, but Twilight cleared her throat as she spoke. About 15 days ago. Why? I was speechless. 15 days ago? Shit, she's been here with me for 15 years. That means a day in their world meant a year here. Well, I continued, it's been a lot more time than that here. How long? Twilight asked. 15 years. All the ponies besides Celestia had their mouths agape. That doesn't That don't explain why she don't know us, Applejack said. Well, that's the thing. When I found her, she was a filly. Come again? For my math, I think she was no older than 4 or 5 years old. Now Celestia looked surprised. You mean to tell us that you've been taking care of Rainbow Dash for 15 years, since she was just a small filly? She asked. I simply nodded and looked over to Dashie, who wore an expressionless look on her face. She is... I started, but I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I know it's not true. God, I wish it was. But I understand. The dad that now makes sense. Celestia cut me off, holding a stern look about her face. She was trying to piece together in her mind what had possibly happened. I chalked it up to the magic. Being unstable possibly reverted her in age. For a few moments it was quiet, besides the breathing of 7 ponies and myself. Finally it was Dashie who broke the silence. So what's supposed to happen now? I looked at the princess, trying to read her face. No matter how good I had gotten at reading Dashie's face, Princess Celestia had the best poker face I'd ever seen. I had no clue what she was thinking, or feeling at that moment. Well, it's quite simple, Twilight. It's quite simple. Twilight? Princess Celestia looked to her pupil, who instantly perked up at hearing her name. Do you still remember that memory spell from the Discord incident? Twilight simply nodded. As she stood from the couch and hopped onto the floor. I knew what was going on, what Celestia had in mind. She wanted Twilight to either erase her memories She wanted Twilight to erase her memories and start from new, or possibly, I hope she just simply wanted to give Dashie her memories of her friendships and time in Ponyville. I wasn't sure what to do. I felt it was right. I knew it was right. It needed to be done. I'd been telling myself that for 15 years as I waited for this moment. But there was something I needed to say before it happened. These ponies were going to take my Dashie away, and I had some words to speak before that could happen. No, wait, please, I started. Twilight stopped and looked to the sun goddess. Just give me a moment to speak with her, please. All I ask, since this is the last time we'll see each other. I had given up holding back my tears, and at this point, I was openly crying. The ponies could tell I was hurting, and Dashie didn't look to be faring too well either, so figuring it wasn't good to prolong the inevitable, I walked over to the chair Dashie sat in, knelt down to meet with eye level as I spoke. Dashie, my little Dashie, I love you with all my heart. You have done wonders to open me up from the man I once was. I had to pause a moment to settle down. You have brought me so much joy in my life that I can't possibly ever thank you for. At this point, Dashie too had begun to cry. That only made it worse for me. These 15 years we have had together, talking, flying, playing, all those have been so special to me. I just want you to know that I will forever love you. It doesn't matter if we aren't biologically related or of different worlds. I don't care what you may ever think of me, or if you ever even remember me. But right now, you being my Dashie, I want you. I poked her on the chest to physically show that I was talking to her. To know that fact. If there is ever a problem that happens, and you need me, don't hesitate to find a way to get me, okay? I tried to laugh, passing that last part off as a joke. It worked only slightly, as we both continued to cry. I could also hear some sniffling from behind me. I can only picture Pinkie Pie crying as much like she had at the end of the second episode in Season 1 after Luna and Celestia had been reunited. Do I have to go, Daddy? It had been a few years since she actually called me Daddy. Most of the times, it was simply Dad or Pops. It felt good knowing she still cared for me enough to call me Daddy. So much like the first time she had said it to me so many years ago. I simply nodded my head as I stood up. Before I could fully grasp my balance, She jumped up onto me and hugged me tight. I could feel her tears on the back of my neck, and I returned the embrace. It's your actual home, Dashie. You don't belong here. You need to go back to where you belong. I belong here with you. It hurt so much to say, but I had to keep her convinced that this was the right thing to do. No, you don't. You're limited here, only able to fly around the house. You have no friends or other ponies to relate to. I was only taking care of you until this time would come, and I never thought it would be this painful. It remained quiet for a few more minutes, as we held each other tight. She didn't fight back, or want to resist what was happening, which told me that she knew as well what must be done. I love you, Daddy. And I love you too, my little Dashie. We separated, and she lowered herself to the ground. At this point, all the other ponies had tears flowing, even the goddess herself. She had seemed quite smug about knowing what had happened, the time difference and such, but it was evident that the age difference was a shock. She most likely had expected to find 35-year-old Rainbow Dash, but instead found my 20-year-old Rainbow Dash. Twilight stepped closer to Rainbow Dash, sniffling once before her horn glowed. I knew what was coming. It hurt so much, but I knew it was right. It was what had to happen for her, for her friends, in a twisted way for me. Now, I could know she was actually going home, and would be around her friends, and she could fly wherever and whenever she wanted to, without any limitations. She could enjoy friends' company once more. Wait! I looked from the floor to Dashie, as she backed away from Twilight. Before I go, I want to get something. Before any pony or myself could protest, she flew up to her room. She was quick and returned with a shoebox in her front hooves. I wasn't sure if she would be allowed to take anything back with her, and half expected the princess to protest, but she remained quiet, allowing Dashie to quickly write down something on a piece of paper and set it on a coffee table. She looked back to me, still crying, but with a smile on her face. She knew she had realized this was how it must end, and I knew that as well. The box, for my guessing, was probably her most cherished items that she kept for if she had to leave. Though it hurt me thinking about it, I hope she had a picture of us. Then again, I also hope not, for she would be forced to remember me in a world away, and that hurt just as much as everyone else. I'm so sorry, Rainbow Dash, Twilight started. I honestly wish there was another way to do this. I wish I didn't have to do this, but... Can't... Dashie started. Can't he come here with me? The stuttering in her voice told me she was actually simply speaking her mind, not actually asking the question. Twilight shook her head, unable to keep eye contact with her friend as she cried before her. Rainbow Dash, Princess Celestia started. He cannot join you in our world, much like how you cannot stay in his. This was all never meant to be, and the world around us was not made to house you. And yet, Celestia looked at me, smiling, and then began to look at our living room. All of the photos of us together, all her knickknacks and belongings strewn around the room. And yet, something beautiful happened here. Something I cannot explain in full. When I realized where you ended up, I expected the worst. I figured you to be ruined, tainted, and tarnished from this world's cruelty. But now, I see that it is quite the opposite. That here, this man that has raised you, shows me that you are in good hooves, or hands as it were. Dashie sniffed once, beginning to calm down as Celestia's words sunk in. Celestia then returned to looking at me, still smiling. I cannot speak for you, but from what I see in front of me, the amount of love you both share and have shared together tells me that you raised her as if she was your own. Even with the obvious differences, you still raised her unbiased as to her species, her origins. You raised her as your daughter, which only makes this entire ordeal so much worse. I absorbed her words, as well as the other ponies in the room. So I must say to you, dear sir, please do not hold my student accountable for this. It was never her, nor any pony else's intention, to cause this much hurt to either of you. If you must blame some pony, I would ask you to blame me. I'm the one that helped bring them here to take Rainbow Dash back to her home, away from here. I just couldn't look at any of them. My heavy breathing breaking down with sobs. My mind was just going on her own, thinking back at all the things Dashie and I did together. I took a deep breath as I spoke. Just how can I Well, there you go. I'm just going to stop there for a while. And